very much. This is Aleida from Cultural Lead.
Lit.
Aleida, Lead. So Aleida, just before we go on, I do the full introduction. Tell us who is and what is Cultural Lead.
Lit.
Lead, my accent, you know.
Thank you, Rue, for having me on Yonkers Voice today. I appreciate it. So on Mondays at 7 on WVOX, I have a radio show called Culturally Lit. And sometimes we go live on social media, but definitely live on WVOX.com. And the show really was inspired by bringing more awareness in our local culture beyond our four walls of our city. So, I connect a lot with the multilingual, multicultural demographics, and we make them aware of what's going on politically, culturally, and in the business sector. And so it's going really well.
When
And
you when you talk about culture, what
yeah.
do you mean? Whose culture?
Right. So this is the interesting thing, because initially I was just thinking, you know what? I have a strong network of Dominicans in the area, and they seem to be pretty much disconnected from what's going on locally, right? And I thought, let me inform them of the culture of government and how it works, and inform them, and also inform the government about the culture, that the growing culture in my area. And since then, it has been expanded beyond that to really kind of discuss individual cultures, where we came from, the culture of our work. I have gone as far as on the radio to talk about the culture of care, right? Like how we care about each other, the culture in the workplace, our political culture. It's we're facing some really tough times, and um, the politics has polarized and dominated the media, so much so that we kind of are forgetting the very basics of really caring about ourselves. So it's really just culture in general, both where you came from and how we live in our everyday lives.
Now, before we promoted this interview about your experience in
Hmm.
Africa. I
Hmm.
know that you just returned from Ghana,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And I'm sure that it was an awesome experience. I'm African myself, and I love I'm from a different part of Africa, Mozambique, but the African culture is amazing, and
You're
we are
from Mozambique, right?
correct.
Yeah.
No, exactly. But before we go to that, let's talk a little bit about the current crisis that it's going on right here in America, in the United States, and all over the world. But we're going to address our country. But I want you to say a few words, Aleida, in Spanish, if that's okay,
Sure.
for our Latino community. That everybody knows what's going on, but the TV shows that we see, the Governor Cuomo's
Hmm.
broadcast on daily basis, President Trump's broadcasting on a daily basis, it's all in English, and we
Right.
need
Right.
we need to tell our people, the Latino community that don't speak English, the seriousness of this. This is not just serious. This is deadly serious.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, and it seems like, and in my opinion, the Latino community are going to be affected in a way that they have no idea how. And the reason why I come to this conclusion is because I know many Latinos. I
Right.
know many families that live right here in Yonkers, two, three, and four families in the same apartment.
Hmm.
Okay? Those families have two and three kids in the same room. Okay,
Hmm.
and everyone is talking about the social distancing, but for those families, that distancing, it's impossible. How can
Right.
you distance yourself if you live three and four families in the same apartment?
Yeah. It's next to impossible, and I will talk about and pretty much say something real quick in Spanish. But I do want to say that that's some of the things that I don't know if the English media or political leadership that is only speaking in English is really understanding the dynamics of not only the lower income level community, but the, bilingual community or non-bilingual. Really, a lot of the there's a lot of residents that they can't comprehend beyond a few sentences in English, and so they have been seeing for a while now the images from China, right, and how crazy that looked, and it really was not. We were not really connecting. I mean, I wasn't taking it that seriously in the beginning. I was thinking, look, we have more people die of the flu. But I kept asking the question, why should we take this seriously? Why is it that serious? And because I don't understand even myself, it's like, why are we paying attention to this COVID-19 or coronavirus and not the 37,000 plus people a year that die of the flu? And someone eloquently put it and explained it to me is that we don't have any vaccines or any medicine for this type of virus. And so, and with that, it has a big potential for a pandemic, for getting out of hand where we can't control it. And so when I heard that, I thought, okay, now that makes sense. Then when I learned it takes about 18 months to really come up with a cure or a vaccine or medicine for it, then I said, wow, we really have to take this seriously because we can't stand 18 months of this virus spreading. So with that said, I also don't think that the government leadership, although they're doing this and communicating, there are Spanish channels that are kind of, translating and talking about it, but culturally, it's not taken that seriously because it's not really believed, and also because locally, the leadership hasn't been developing that relationship with the Latino community in such a way that they can now connect with them and say, hey, this is serious, listen up. You know what I mean? I don't know if that, makes sense to you, but if I trust you, I trust your knowledge and what you're doing. And if we have a relationship and you say, hey, Aleida, you give me a call and say, this is happening, take this seriously, I'm going to believe it. We built that relationship. But if I never see you and we never communicate, and then you just tell me, take this seriously, it's going to take me a minute. That's just the bottom line. So, yo quiero decirles a aquellos que nos están escuchando que en verdad no han tomado esto serio, que por favor llamen a sus oficiales local y le digan que ellos tienen que poner más información en español y que en verdad expliquen bien lo serio que es este virus y cómo ellos deben comunicarse con nuestra comunidad, porque yo creo que nosotros tenemos voz y podemos hablar, pero si no llamamos, ellos no saben lo que estamos pensando, ¿verdad? No saben lo que estamos sufriendo, no saben que tenemos a veces 8 y 10 miembros de familia en un solo apartamento y no podemos alejarnos, o tenemos que ir a la tienda todos los días porque la nevera no trabaja. Y ahora tú vas a la tienda y a veces nos das miedo porque hay demasiada gente que están comprando comida, pero no tengo de otra, tengo que salir todos los días. O me falta, no tengo cable porque no puedo pagar por cable, entonces nada más resulta que yo puedo escuchar cosas en el teléfono. So hay muchos problemitas que nos impiden comunicarse con aquellos que toman decisiones. Entonces, si usted está escuchando ahora mismo en Yonkers Voice, por favor, comuníquese con Ru Ross, que Ruth, you speak like 10 different languages. Habla español, habla François también, inglés.
Francés.
Y podemos ayudarlos, así es que comuníquese con Yonkers Voice si no sabe cómo comunicarse con sus líderes locales.
Guys, believe me, neither Aleida or myself are doctors. We cannot give medical advice to anyone, but as a concerned citizens, we can give you suggestions. And the way that I see this crisis, I think that we should assume that everyone got the virus.
Right.
We should assume that everybody that we see being removed from a building is contaminated, because we need an abundance of precaution. And taking precaution is never too much. We have broadcast a couple of pictures of bodies being removed from apartments. we get sometimes a little bit of a negative feedback. How do you know the person has this? How do you know the person that has that? Guys,
Mm-hmm.
at this point, that is really not important. What's
Mm-hmm.
important is that we are trying to tell you, what we are trying to tell you is this: regardless if that body has coronavirus, COVID-19, regardless, be precaution. Assume that that body is infected.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't hurt you. By assuming that, you take precaution. Like if you see somebody being removed from an apartment, you don't know if he does or if he doesn't. So when you go into that apartment, make sure that you don't touch all the knobs. Make sure that you take all the necessary precaution. Correct, Aleida?
Correct. Also, I think that we have to assume that, in assuming that everybody has it, it is how close we stand uh, uh, with other people in public. If you're not living with that person, you should really maintain as much distance as possible. I know I've had a couple of people kind of get offended, and I was like, whoa, 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 no, I'm sorry, I can't hug you. Um, it's nothing personal. I'm just like not hugging, not shaking hands. And still, till today, people are, wanting to get too close and shaking hands and say hello. I know it's difficult, but it's stand 5 feet away, and the other thing, Rue, is the mask, right? They're now suggesting that the WHO, the World Health Organization, is suggesting that we all should have our face covered, but we don't have enough masks to go around. We want them to be used for the nurses and people in the medical field. So they're suggesting that we use scarves, or we can create our own, so that if we assume that we have it, or maybe I could be a carrier and infect someone else. And when we go outside, to wear at least a veil over your face, right? Cover your mouth with a scarf or some cloth mask that you can make at home. Because we don't know. Now they're saying there's a possibility that some of this could be airborne and it can be contagious that way. But we want to save all the protective gear for the hospitals and the doctors. But, I'm putting scarves together and having my son and my kids, and we all, when we step outside, we're covering our faces, where I wasn't doing that before.
And guys, also let me bring it up this, information, new information is coming up every day. Maybe about a week or so ago, they were saying that masks were not necessary,
Right,
that
right.
the masks really didn't protect you. Today, they are saying that, yes, do wear masks because masks do protect you. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of criticizing, oh, you're saying this, then tomorrow you're saying that, remember that new information is coming up as this virus expands. As
Right.
data comes in, they checking everything out, and new conclusions come up. So follow the directions that they are giving us. Follow that direction. Uh,
Absolutely.
I see somebody, Hilda Mejias. I keep my distance with my daughter and grandson, and we okay with that because we do understand. Well, I wish more people would understand.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
once you live in the same house, I don't know how effective that distance really is. But regardless, take all the precautions necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Stop
Mm-hmm.
the hugging, stop the kissing, stop the affection. For now, or minimize them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. I know
You're
that
absolutely right.
yesterday we interviewed Dr. Rabadi. We thank him for taking the time to talk to us. And he said that when he gets home, he stays in his garage. He has a 2-year-old daughter that he wants to hug. It's hard not to, but he stays at his garage. But guess what, Aleida? Not everyone is a doctor. Not everyone has the luxury of
Of
having a
having a
garage.
garage.
You know, not everyone can do that, and we have to manage, okay, with what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. With the
Now,
space we have, and not everybody has different floors that you can separate.
correct. Now you live in Mount Vernon, right? Or
Yes.
you live in. How is Mount Vernon dealing with this situation?
I mean, the Mayor Sean Patterson Howard has, I think, I've done a pretty good job in communicating via Facebook about what's going on. Facebook has been sort of for a few years now, almost like the place where we get our news or information locally, as we do not have as many public access channels as other municipalities. So she is gifted in that area, and being able to stay on Facebook Lives, and she has been good about giving advice, albeit we're not doing it in Spanish yet. As you mentioned, we don't see that as much. Mount Vernon, I think there's still some people that haven't taken it as seriously, but this last week I saw a difference. Locally they removed the basketball rings, what you call that, the hoops, from the parks, so that people won't play basketball outside, because up until last week you had kids going out there and playing basketball and being too close. And I'm having a hard time with my teenage daughter, who doesn't like being closed in. The online school she loves, but the idea of not being around her friends and getting out is challenging. So I still see that people are having a hard time with that. But the other thing that I noticed that stores are doing better at is the social distancing or physical distancing while we're shopping. I still can't. I went today and I hadn't gone in 5 days, and I don't want to go outside. I don't want to go in the stores, because I think that what happens is people may stand in line outside, maybe keeping 3 to 5 feet from each other. But then once you go in the store, it's like you almost like running from people before you get something, because you don't want to be too close, right?
Well, that's the thing, Aleida. Maybe you go into the store as somebody who was in the store, coughed inside and came out, and you walk in. This is becoming so difficult to manage. But in regards to your city, I'm happy that the mayor is giving advice live, and I'm especially happy because, for what I hear, she stopped the live broadcast a while back because they were waiting for the equipment. It seems like a new equipment arrived. So staying, advising people online, be in touch, and making the good suggestions, recommendation, it's important.
It's very important. So, but we have had, I have had some friends, obviously, I'm going to keep a level of privacy, but there are some people having some tough times, in relationships, and being cooped up, and a lot of tension. In times like these, we have issues with domestic violence, and people sometimes are afraid to talk, right? They don't want to report anything, or talk to strangers. So that's kind of hard, because you got to be 24 hours with just having the ability to take a walk. So I understand how that feels. I mean, I'm blessed that everything is great at home, but I feel for when I have a friend call me and they have a hard time, and there's not much I can do except talk.
So it's a crisis, guys. Huge caution. Don't take unnecessary chances. Stop the spread. Stay home.
Stop the spread. Stay home. Stay calm.
Save lives. Now, Aleida, this interview is titled "My Experience in Africa," and we are going to move into that for now. Okay, is that all right?
Yeah, that's all right.
Ghana.
Hey, wait a minute. Since we're talking about Africa, Rue, when you told me you were from Africa,
Mozambique.
I said, what? I thought you were like, this guy's from Brazil, man.
No, I'm from Mozambique. Actually, I was born in Cape Verde, which is an African island. Okay, my parents are from there. We moved to Mozambique. I was very, very, just a baby. I think about 6 months. So I identify myself more as from Mozambique than actually from the place where I was born. Okay, all my friends are from there. My culture basically is from there. I grew up there. To me, Mozambique is my home.
Is your home. That's very nice. That's very nice. Yeah, I just I just returned from Ghana when this crisis hit. We just missed it, or we could have been stuck there
Yes.
for quite a while.
Now, why did you go to Ghana?
So I've been going there for I think this is my fourth or fifth time. I can't keep track anymore. But 1 year I went there twice, and so I either go twice or once a year for the last 3 to 4 years. My media naranja, my other half, his father moved to Ghana about 20 some odd years ago. And he is the executive director of the Panifest Foundation. He has been there working with the Office of the President about inviting people from the diaspora to come and visit Africa. And
Wait a minute. You said is inviting. I didn't get my invitation yet.
well, he's out there. See what happened was you missed the message because he has been on TV and different outlets. And so inviting people to come, and in the last couple of years, it has become even more popular. So in 2018, and so I've been working with him on that effort, and I've been traveling back and forth. But in 2018, in October of 2018, or the fall, we went to Ghana and kicked off this year of return to invite all people of African descent to come back to Ghana as a celebration of 400 years, right, since the first slave stepped foot in Jamestown, Virginia, and say, you know what, it's time to return and learn where we came from. And so that initiative was kicked off in Ghana, and then we came to DC. And there was a group of the president of Ghana and Rabbi Kohen Halevi, who is leading this effort, and my would-be father-in-law, and he went back to Ghana, and then 2019, the year of return took off. All these celebrities, there's about 40 celebrities that came on the first trip. And then it caught on, right? So 2019 was a big year for Ghana, and we were part of that year return. This year, I went back because my intention was to bring more awareness in the Latino community about coming back to Africa. And for years now, I've been wanting to set up schools in Africa, but I thought I was going to do it in Equatorial Guinea. Or Guinea, where they speak Spanish in Africa. And it just so happens that my relationships have built with people from Ghana. And so I'm now just traveling to Ghana. And then from Ghana, I will travel to other countries in Africa with the same initiative. I want to invite people and Afro-Latinos to come and accept part of their roots and visit Africa and get that experience, which we normally don't think about as a culture.
Let's take this opportunity to tell people what is Africa. People think that Africa is a country. Not all, but Africa is a continent,
right?
And it's a huge continent. There is South Africa. There is East Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt is part of. What is Egypt part of? Egypt is part of Africa.
Right.
So is Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
Africa, it's huge. It's a very huge continent,
mm-hmm.
and where people speak many different languages.
Yes.
Ghana, as an example, they speak French.
Mm-hmm.
Guinea-Conakry or Guinea, I don't know what's the correct accent for it. They some parts speak Portuguese, other parts speak French.
Mm-hmm.
Where I come from, Mozambique, the national language is Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
But Mozambique is such a huge country and
Mm-hmm.
it's broken down in many tribes.
Mm-hmm.
And within each tribe, they speak their own dialect. I call
Right.
them dialect. They're not language because they don't have a grammar structure.
Right.
So they speak their own. From where I am, we speak Landin, which is what I speak. In Cape Verde, we speak Creole, which is Creole. That is a Creole from many places,
Right.
Indian.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
we speak a form of Creole, which is a
Right.
language of my particular island. That's the language that I speak. So, and one of the biggest problems with Africa, according to me, especially in my country, Mozambique, it's there is so many tribes,
Yes.
so many cultures,
Mm-hmm.
so many beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
The guy from the north does not understand the guy who is 50 miles
Mm-hmm.
away from him, or
Mm-hmm.
the guy who is on east side.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Mm-hmm.
speak different things, we believe in different things, we follow different religions. It's everything is different, and
Right.
sometimes because of that diversity of culture,
Mm-hmm.
problems come with it.
Mm-hmm.
But Africa, it's a rich continent with very rich resource. It's a beautiful, beautiful continent, regardless of which part of Africa you go. And I would suggest and recommend anyone, if you have the time and if you have the financial resources, take a trip to Africa. And the best place to go is Mozambique. Don't forget
Of
about Ghana.
course, of course, of course, of course. Why not? You hit a couple of interesting points there. It's like one that people think Africa is a country. Oh, you went to Africa and that's it, right? They're not really understanding the different countries within the continent. The other part of it is that because all the images that we have been accustomed to seeing in media of the poverty that faces the continent, we are not really clear or have a good understanding of the richness that comes, all the rich resources that comes out of Africa, and different parts of Africa are different. Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Cape Town. There
Mozambique, Malawi, Zimbabwe.
Malawi, yeah, there is just, and I've met almost, I think probably there's maybe three people that, maybe three countries that I have not met people from. And even in Mount Vernon, for example, I met someone from Equatorial Guinea, and he's speaking this Spanish with this weird accent. I'm saying, wait, where are you from? And he says, I'm from Africa. I said, get out of here. And so we sometimes, we don't stop to ask, but there is people in near us from virtually every country, in Africa. But we just think Africa as a whole. And the other part that you mentioned about the different tribes. When I went to Africa for the first time and I learned of all the different tribes, because the same thing is in Ghana. You have all these different tribes. They call them companies, right? And you have different, the North, the South. Um, it made me think, the human aspect of things, that if we all as humans looked the same, we would still find something to be different on. And so, in my family, people think, for a long time we had the conversations that when you talk about Africa, you only see Black people. That you don't see white people when you talk about, Africa, or that when you talk about Africa, there's some weird language that people are
But there
not
is one. We call it the tongue. In my
fine.
country, we
Right,
have a zone that we speak by tongue. We call it tongue lang.
right. But it doesn't mean
Yeah,
that you don't speak English. It doesn't mean that
right.
you don't speak another, French, or, the surprising factor that there is a country out there where people speak Spanish. It's like, what? So the idea that people can't wrap their idea around that. We say, hey, people say everything came from Africa. When you go to Africa and you visit the different countries, you are able to see the richness that is the continent. What we miss is how other countries around the world have benefited from the resources that Africa has to offer.
Aleida,
Yeah,
United States of America has benefited from the natural resources and resources from the African continent
absolutely.
and from the people.
Absolutely.
This country is what it is.
Because of Africans.
Thank you. But some folks have a problem understanding that,
They have a
America
problem accepting it because
accepting it. Yes.
you don't want to owe Africans nothing. To put it in the vernacular, nobody wants to owe Africans nothing, and Africans are not that favored.
Yep.
So we don't want to be part of the people that are not favored, and we don't want to be part of we don't want to give people credit, right? We don't want to owe anybody anything. And the reality is that when you go to Africa, you'll learn the great strengths that comes from African people, the geniuses that come out of Africa, the beauty that is Africa and its natural resources. Of course, corruption, like anything else, there and here, limits progress and the sharing. We see it now, right, in this crisis. Aren't you able to see more with this crisis, the haves and the have-nots? Who started testing first for this? Who got access to, right? So there's like a big disparity between the how the distribution of wealth, and that Africa is no different in that. But definitely, I think that we need to focus more on when this crisis is gone and past. We're going to see that Africa has a huge potential and may be the next, as I call it, superpower, right? You have a lot of women that are becoming wealthy there with their own businesses. I found that interesting, that I wasn't expecting.
Look at Angola. Well, we don't know how she got her fortune, and many people say that she got her fortune for the illegal means, but she got her fortune.
But then if she did, Rue, like, okay, so isn't it about time that one of the females got it?
Men been doing that forever, right?
Right.
And no one complained much.
No one complained. They just shared.
Exactly. Oh, this is the richest man in the world. This is the richest man.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know how he got that money? But now they're worried about how the woman got the money.
That's right.
No one should get money illegally or by the abuse of power.
Right.
But that should go for man and woman.
Right.
Not what is, you see, this is not your first trip to Ghana.
No.
So you had an opportunity to formulate an opinion through many visits.
Right.
Tell us about your engagement, because one thing is you go there for the first time and you like it, you come home all hypered up. But that opinion, it's really not real because you were there once. But when you go once, you go twice, you go 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Now you're able to formulate an opinion based on many things, not just on that excitement of the first visit.
Right.
You follow me?
Yes.
So tell me, what was how would I put it? In culture, people to people, what was the thing that you liked the most in regards to personal connection with the people of Ghana?
I think that the first thing, so you're right, every trip had its own learning experience, and every trip got me closer to understanding the culture, right? And the first time, yes, it was like, wow, I'm finally home. I did go, did the tour of what we call the dungeons, or the castles where slaves were kept before being shipped off to other parts of the world. One of the things that I learned before my first trip, and then I was able to really kind of, it kind of touched me in ways that it's hard for me to capture or explain in this interview. And that is that when the slaves left, departed from, that were taken from that port and that Amina and Cape Coast dungeon to other parts of the world, the first stop was Dominican Republic, where I'm from. And I noticed the people there, they're not they're not really connected to that story because that's not their story. It's almost like that's not their history. They don't understand. It's like whatever. That building is there. That happened, years ago, and we're about, saying hello to the. We're just happy that you came. We're happy that you're visiting us, and people are very welcoming. So I found two things. One, people were very welcoming, and two, they were very disconnected for, as to the reason that I was there and trying to understand my own history. With that said, I engage in those conversations with people locally, and it's like, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that history is there, but we're all the same, you know. We have different perspectives, but we're all the same. So I felt more actually that I was welcomed home sometime more there the first time than say going back to Dominican Republic after being gone for 5 years and then coming back, right? So I
Yeah,
came back to DR. It's almost like, yeah, where you been? But I go to Ghana and it's, listen, we welcome you home, Yeah, we
nice.
understand that history, but we welcome you back. So the people were very welcoming. They're also very interested in doing business and commerce with you. So I found that. The children, though, here's what.
Hold on,
Sorry.
Aleida. Allow me to put a question here and there. You know,
Yes.
so
Sorry, I'm gonna go on and talk for for days and hours, right?
I gotta stop you here and there.
Yes.
But
Go
hold
ahead.
on, just this question for Hilda Mejias. How many hours on the plane is to go to Africa? Well, Hilda, as we were saying earlier, Africa is not one place.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there is many countries within the African continent, and the flight depends on where you're going. You know,
Right.
if you go to Mozambique, where I'm from, it might take you a couple of days because you have to go to different places in order to pick up the next plane. What about Ghana? How long is it to get to Ghana? Is
So yes, the flight, um, Hilda, was it Hilda? The flight
yeah.
is from New York to Ghana straight from Delta is using Delta Airlines direct is 9 hours, nine
Hmm.
and a little bit, nine and change. And it could be difficult if have only traveled 4 or 5 hours. The first time it's like, what, by 4 or 5 hours, I want to get up, but you can get up and walk around, get your circulation going, but it could be tough. So I recommend flying at night when you normally would be sleeping anyway, and
Yes.
just sleep.
That's how I normally fly.
Yeah.
Overnight, you sleep. When you get up, when you get there in the morning, you still have the full
Full
day
day. So you
to
feel like
have
you
fun.
lost no time.
Now let's go. Let's continue in what you were talking about, commerce. Commerce.
So commerce. So I've been lured a lot into getting interested in the idea of commerce and doing business in Ghana. And I think people need to really pay attention and take a look at that, and to consider that we don't have to do business just within our four walls, or even the US, or even our own, just with our city, county, or even US, that we can go beyond that internationally and beyond the countries that where we're from. For instance, this last 2019, when the whole initiative of the year of return was so successful, that they're now continuing once we get back to normal, and they are the tagline, I believe, is beyond the return. So like, now what? Now you return, now what you do? And they want to encourage investments. So with that, they're giving land so that you are able to build. But what I find more interesting is when I was in this last trip, I met with the ambassador there for the diaspora, and through my father-in-law and my other half, we kind of all sat and had a meeting and discussed the opportunities for investment in real estate. And you could actually, Dr. Bennett is the ambassador's name. You could actually go there and say, look, they have plans with homes already built near the capital, or in the capital, Accra. and you can have some comfortable payment plans and have a nice home that you can either use to rent out to other people, or or you can invest to visit yourself. I'm interested in coffee. So I want to expand a coffee business in Ghana along with schools. So we've opened for business in Ghana. Now everything's on hold. But maybe in another interview, when I feel more comfortable sharing all the details of my business, we will talk about those things.
Yes,
but
yes.
I can tell you that there's a lot of good opportunities that we need to look at in every sector.
So guys,
Yeah.
if you're interested in investing in Ghana,
Mhm.
or even if you are not interested at this time, but doing a little research and look at the opportunities, it's
Right.
never too much. You might like what you hear. You
Mhm.
might think it's an awesome investment. You might think that it's not. But to make a decision, you need to know the factors. You need to know everything.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then you make the decision based on information. Now let's talk about the culture, music.
Mhm.
Now you probably did not know this, Aleida. In Mozambique, our music is called merengue, and in Santo Domingo is
It's
merengue.
merengue.
Exactly, and it's all about the drums. Okay, and when earlier you mentioned about texting,
Right.
internet, and texting. Guess what? In Africa, they've been texting for a long, long time.
Really.
Yes, because tribe here communicated with tribe there through the drums, the sounds
Right.
of
That's
the
true.
drum.
That's true. That's true.
That's how they communicated. You know, same ideology, different
Right.
hardware,
That's
but
right.
the
That's
same
true.
ideology. Me here communicating with you there through airwaves. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
we've been doing that for a while.
Yes. You know what? That is interesting. Where it's we always find different ways to communicate, and I guess the technology is, and now with this crisis, we're learning even more new ways to communicate with internet. In Africa, what I found fascinating is everybody has a phone. It's a lot easier to get a phone than it is to get TV. I saw somebody one time saying, it's a mobile money. The mobile money is very common, like paying for things. And with mobile money, in some ways, people there are more advanced in that area than we are here, because we have the means of having a bank in every corner. We have, a computer, we have TV, we have other ways to, we have an actual phone. There, everybody has a mobile phone and communicate with that. And but you're right. Uh, we've been texting through drums uh, from what, thousands of years ago, 400 years ago,
Correct.
500 years ago.
You're correct.
So, I find it surprising every time. I know that you said that already, that you're from Africa, but I was like, no, you're not. I'm waiting for you to like tell me, nah, it's just a hoax. You're just pretending.
But that's I don't know if ignorance is the word for it, but maybe lack of research.
Yes.
People in United States think that if you're not black,
Right.
you're not from Africa. And I
Right.
tell people all the time, there is white Africans, there is black Africans, there
Yes.
is light skinned Africans. African, to be African, you don't have to be black.
No, that's right.
You know, I'm as African as any other guy in Africa is,
Yes.
and I have suffered, racism like most people in
Hmm.
United States. And
Right.
sometimes when I talk about racism with people here in the States, young people, sometimes they call me racist, to believe it or not.
Hmm.
Okay?
Hmm.
Those that don't know who I am or where I come from or my life experiences, they call me racist. And I tell them very often, let me tell you about racism, man. What I lived racism, you learn it from books. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's two different things. Living it and
Yeah.
reading it. Okay. It's two different things. I seen the whites, the government, because they were whites back then,
Hmm.
telling people, including myself, You go on that side of the road, you go on that side of the road. I
Right.
have seen grown men, black men, tied up on poles to be whipped on
Wow.
Sunday mornings because of whatever they did,
Yes.
during the week. They got caught, they take them to a holding pens, and on Sundays they would tie them up to a pole in the middle of the village and wipe them. Okay,
Wow.
and it's terrible when you hear a grown-up man scream and cry in pain. But the reason they done that was to set examples for others. Okay, I know that at least in Mozambique, we were colonized by the Portuguese,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not allow Africans, the majority,
Mm-hmm.
to be educated
Right.
because they felt when you keep people uneducated, you can control them much easier.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You can.
I
So,
think you say something, Rue, that's hugely important because as I learn more about my own history and accept it, right? Because there's like different steps, right? There's I'm ignorant to something, I do research, I learn something, and then I have to kind of accept it. And when you are learning the history and you say, you know what, Dominican Republic was the first stop, for example, of the slaves, and then you learn the rules, the roles of Portugal and the Portuguese people and colonizing and being and participating in the slave trade, you see you see somebody from Portugal and you go, aha, you, and then before I complete the thought, I realized, when I grew up in Dominican Republic, I saw a lot of suffering of even the Dominicans and what they did to the Haitians and how they would, grab Haitians and pile them up like animals and put them in back of pickup trucks and drive them across the border because they are in the country illegally. And then, I grew up in a town called Sasua, or is a town that was founded by the Jews in escaping persecution. And so our own history, even growing up, it's like, there is no association of being. We don't get taught that history. We don't get taught the association to Africa or Africans. Even when you land the airport today in Dominican Republic, all you see is the Jews that came in the 40s on the walls of the airports. You don't see anything, and it's almost an eerie picture when you come in, you land, you get there, and you're seeing mostly black and brown skin, but on the walls, you don't see anybody that looks like us representing it. So they want to keep us ignorant to our history because that's how you can control us. And I think, this medium, online, Yonkers Voice, and many others who, this is how we're breaking that barrier by
yeah.
educating people more on the history.
Aleida, that is that the comment that you see on the screen. It's a very important one and had to be put up. Hilda Mejia, when you write, you write. I'm just kidding, okay, Hilda. I'm just kidding. Just some humor here and there. Humor
Yes,
is good for the soul.
yes, absolutely.
But Aleida, you said something so important that we need to talk about it. Okay, very often we are our worst enemy.
Yes.
Very often. Okay, I see that we talk about racism, we talk about violence from whites towards black. Every time a black
Mm-hmm.
person
Mm-hmm.
is hurt in different ways, we blame the the whites. We have rallies. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about Black lives do matter, and they do. But
Mm-hmm.
I think that every life matters. Okay, but I have noticed in my experiences in life, not just in the United States, but also in Africa, okay, that even though we were oppressed by the colonialism, by the
Mm-hmm.
Portuguese, and in other parts of Africa, they were oppressed by different colonials, could be the British in as
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
South Africa. different nationalities, colonized different countries, but the shit was the same.
Right.
Okay, but I also noticed, Aleida, that very often we were our worst enemies in Africa. Blacks were turned in by other blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Blacks hurt other blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Blacks did this and that to other blacks.
Mm-hmm.
But we complain about when certain things are done to blacks.
Mm-hmm.
It's time for blacks to stop doing those things and lead by example and say, look, this is how we should deal with men. Okay, isn't it time for blacks to stop the violence towards blacks or any other race?
Mm-hmm.
Or any other race? Sometimes, look, I'm a black man,
Mm-hmm.
and I hate to see when people, whites, call blacks animals. I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
hate to hear that statement.
Mm-hmm.
But we should not give them ammunition for them to call us that. Okay. Sometimes I see things that I say, look, you acting like as such. Why don't you show them by your actions, not just words? Because I have a hashtag words, actions,
Mm-hmm.
not words. You can
Yes.
say whatever you want, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to put your actions behind the words that you're saying. What do you think about that?
Um, boy, oh boy, oh boy. This is the kind of part that, you said something that's a little bit controversial, right?
Yeah,
Which
I
is,
know, but
yeah,
that's what we are all about. It's controversial. We want to challenge your idea. We want to hear
yes,
what you have to
yes.
say. We don't have to agree with each other later, but
No,
we
no,
have to,
absolutely, no.
but we have to respect each other.
Always, always. I listen. Here's the thing. I mean, we could talk all day about this, and there's a good point that you brought up, and that is the black on black hate, or as they say, black on black crimes, and this and that, and your question is, well, why can we just stop doing this to each other? And and when you look back at history in Africa and how we were the worst to each other. Again, this is why I mentioned the point earlier. One, um, if we all look the same, right, we would find something to be different about. If you and I looked exactly the same, have the same shade of skin, had the same economic level, had the same, blue eyes, we would probably start looking and try to figure out like, no, I'm better than you because my eyes, they're blue, but they're brighter.
Yeah,
So we'll find something. With that said, though, I think we have to look at, even if Black people, and we hurt each other, and back in Africa, we're hurting each other, we didn't have the power and the economic power that, say, for example, the white people, or the British, the used to colonize Africa and use it to really put people against each other, because obviously in division we can easily conquer, right? So if you say to me, look at modern day, for example, um, look at Westchester County, look at the differences between northern Westchester and southern Westchester, Mount Vernon, Yonkers versus other towns, Scarsdale, Bronxville. There's differences, right? There's differences culturally, there's differences in race and whatnot. Now you say there's differences in economic level, there's differences in how people treat each other, there's even differences in how we cover the media. And people could say, oh, that Mount Vernon, there's just a bunch of, I've had people say, oh, that's just all Black people. It's like Chicago. They're all killing each other over there. They're just like, they don't love each other. They don't. But how would you feel if someone comes to your group or your team in your business, say Yonkers Voice or what have you, you have a group of 10 people, and somebody else comes, would say to one of your guys and say, you know what, listen, if you do this for me, and forget Rue, and I'm going to give you this amount of money, and this is going to be, you're going to have an extra $400,000. I'm going to do this, and you could do this for me, and sell you this idea, or sell the guy this idea that life is better if he turns against you? And the guy is struggling with his everyday life of sustaining himself, or he's just greedy. Either one works, right? He takes on that deal and goes against you. And you're like, man, but I've been there for you all this time. We're the same. We're supposed to trust and love each other. It's hard to kind of, so people forget, I guess is my point, that it's easy to just say, you know what, black on black, or we don't treat each other well, but not understanding the damage of colonialism, the damage of that, the post-traumatic stress syndrome from post-slavery. People don't understand that. Just like white people and were able to build wealth and still benefit from it, so are Black people still dealing with the post-traumatic stress from slavery. And even before all that, when you talk about in Africa, tribes going against each other's tribes, look at finances, look at what people were fighting for. They were fighting for power, they were fighting for land, right? It's just once slavery happened, that got taken to a whole new level. Here we are in the United States of America, and we are still talking about why can't just Black people stop doing that to each other? No, can we address that we haven't yet recognized the damage that history has given to our communities? Dominican Republic is one. We still can't even admit that we're Black. So we have a lot more work to do, right? We don't want to recognize that history, but we have to understand the damage that has been done there to be able to understand it from a more compassionate perspective. So instead of like saying, hey, why can't Black people, Black people are just, coming against each other and they're mistreating each other and all that. We have to see how we're marginalized as a society and pinned against each other. And you said it right before. We have, ignorance. There's you can conquer, right, by keeping you ignorant and not educated. So you have people that can easily be pinned against each other by the basic structure of keeping you ignorant. So a lot of us are ignorant to so many things, and we allow ourselves to get pinned against each other and not realizing what's happening. This is all about money and power.
Okay. Now, Millie, no one is saying that there is no white on white crime. We all know that there is.
Right.
Okay. So no one here implies.
But not as much. But you all see the differences, though. You see the differences in different neighborhoods and the crime in different neighborhoods. You see.
Exactly. So no one implied that there is none. Okay.
Right.
But this show is about the African experience,
right?
Not about the white experience. Maybe we will have one about why white crime doesn't get the same attention as black on black crime.
Right.
That's another show.
Right. I can't speak on the white experience, right?
Right.
We
talk about on the black experience, on African experience.
Right. And how it's covered in the media, right? What we are, Rue, in my family, we have, we have people from, different, born in different parts of the country, in Dominican Republic and in the US, and we have white and black in our family. But growing up, right, I was, I didn't know I was black until I came to the United States.
What did you think you were?
Exactly. The power of messaging and conditioning of the mind, right? We don't say in Dominican Republic, we say, no, I'm Dominican, I'm Spanish, I'm Hispanic, my family came from Spain, and the Incas and the local Indians, and that's it. There is no Africa talk.
Yeah.
So when you grow up like that, and my grandfather white and my grandmother black from Haiti, it's like, okay, well, he did that. He married a black female, but he would advise me, no, you're not marrying anybody black. You're going to be with, I had to be with a white. I had to mix with a white race. So there was no way around it. And
so you needed to purify your race, I guess.
Yes. And we had to, and it's like, and life was going to be easier. if your kids look more white.
Yes.
And
And
so,
there is a point there, Aleida.
yeah. So then how am I supposed to know with that conditioning, right? When I go and I came to the United States and I'm working in sales and I'm knocking on doors and, doing door to door, business to business sales. And one guy, a CEO of a major company, I won't mention, he says to me, young lady, one day you're going to find out that, because he's asking, where are you from? I said, I'm Dominican. Oh, where's your family? What's your history? Oh, they're from Spain. My last name Castillo. And I gave him the whole rundown of the history that I was taught. And he says, young lady, one day you're going to realize you're Black. I was like, get the flip out of here. That ain't happening. And sure enough, 10 years later, as I start learning more about who gets what in the business world, I say, wait a minute, there's something here. And I start identifying more with my own history. And that has to do a lot with accepting and loving who you are and where you came from. And I said, well, wait a minute. You know what? As a kid, when my grandfather was putting those thoughts in my brain, I wouldn't even go out in the sun a lot because I wanted not to be darker. Because I thought, hey, it's always better to be lighter, and it's always better. White is always better. They have more money, they are nicer, they treat you better, they, all that, everything is, so all those messages we kind of ignore. And that right now, even with the media, we see that more. We see that focus on Black on Black crime, or being dark is bad and being white is good. Those messages are all sent on a regular basis. So we may not notice it sometimes, but I often think, is it because there cannot be good without us seeing bad, right? How do you know the difference of good if you don't know what's bad?
Exactly. So, Aleida, are you trying to tell me this. Do you think that today, 2020, life is easier if you are white? I know that back in the 50s, back in the 70s, back in the 80s, life was much easier if you had the white skin.
Yeah,
Okay?
I think.
I remember when I was growing up, if two people came to in Mozambique, going back in time, came to ask for a job, and if you were white but no education, and if you were Black with some education, and they had to put somebody in charge, who do you think would get that job?
It's still the same today. I think that it's just not as obviously we have more successful Black and brown
We got
people.
sophisticated in how we do our racism.
Yes, we're smarter about doing it, more strategic, right? We're practice tokenism.
Yeah.
If I want to look like I'm doing, my company is multicultural, I'll put. Or if my county or my government is multicultural, I'll put, a Black person, a female, a Black female, and I'll put them up front. And then on the back end, we're still sharing the wealth and the resources and the contracts and the money with, right?
In Mozambique, we have a saying. I'm going to tell you in Portuguese, and then I'm going to tell you in English. Mesma merda, diferentes moscas.
The
same
same
shit,
poop,
different flies. Same shit, different flies.
Yeah.
Things just get more sophisticated.
Absolutely.
They create an illusion, an optical illusion that projects no racism, but that is racism.
And I think we were able to see that change, right, from Obama to the current president. Some pushback, and people are afraid of, say, the browning of America, right? All the immigrants coming from different parts of the world, and we're afraid of that. And I think it makes us stronger. I think I have no, I have no issues with people from any part of the world, and of any race. But
well, Aleida, look. We just had the record today. This is the longest interview I have done, and I have done on video. It was very entertaining. Time went very quick.
Very quick.
but we have to come to an end. We have to conclude. So I don't know if there is any message that you want to put out there. Maybe you want to tell once more your network. So if people want to listen to you, if they want to watch your show or hear your show, where to go, how to reach you.
Yes. So I do want to say that it's a good idea that you had was to have someone else and talk about the white perspective, but it would be a great idea if you have white Africans and give that perspective, because I have some friends that are white Africans, and they do have a different perspective. They still call themselves African American, but they look different. Okay, so with that said, my name is Aleida Castillo. I am on Mondays at 7 on Culturally Lit, WVOX.com. You can just go on Facebook and hashtag Culturally Lit, and you'll able to find me. And soon you will be hearing from me with some bilingual shows. So I will be telling you more about it. Ru, thank you so much for this opportunity. You're doing great work, and we still have a lot more to do.
Yes, and please give my friend Jeanette a hello. Tell her I said hello. And guys, Yonkers Voice is always doing what we think is best, to keep you informed. We bring people to our show, people that can give you a different point of views, different ways of thinking. There is no issues with disagreeing. The only issue that sometimes I have on my page is with disagreeing in a rude way and disrespectful way. Okay, that I have a problem. We have a set of rules that we have to comply, and I'm fully aware that I'm not able to keep all of you happy. That is a task that I gave up many, many years ago. It's impossible. In my own family of 5 people, I cannot keep them all happy. Just imagine keeping everybody happy here. So I gave up on that. But you are free to disagree, but disagree in a respectful way, especially towards my guests. They don't come here to be insulted or disrespectful. So share this video, spread the word, tell people about Yonkers Voice. This is it. This is the place where you come and get raw news, what's happening, the way it's happening, where it's happening. We don't censor, we don't sugarcoat it. This is it. Watch, formulate your own opinion. Some people like it, some people don't, but that's life. Thank you, Aleida. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.